Hi, it's Stephanie, and this is lesson 23 of the B2 course. So this is a grammar lesson, and it's the second lesson on the future perfect tenses. So I'm Stephanie, this is level B2 and lesson 23. Now, in this lesson, we are going to focus on three areas. We'll be looking at the future perfect continuous tense, and we will look at how to form the future perfect continuous. We will look at the meaning of the future perfect continuous, and we will look at the use of the future perfect continuous. Now, if you remember in lesson 21, we looked at future perfect simple, so we will also contrast these two tenses in this slide as well. Okay, so let's start with having a look at the form. So, our example sentence, next month I will have been living here for 5 years. So, we form the future perfect continuous with will plus have plus been and the verb in ing form. So, as always, when we meet a new tense, it's important to have a look at the positive, a negative, and a question form. So let's do that. So positive, I will have been living here for 5 years. Negative, I won't have been living here for 5 years. Remember, will not contracted is won't. And the question form, will you have been living here for 5 years? So again, it's a very easy tense to form because you just need to remember will plus have plus been and an ing form of the main verb. So what about the meaning with this tense? So future perfect continuous is used to express that something will last for a specified period of time in the future. So because we have an ing, remember with ing, we're looking at a continuous period of time. So let's look at some examples to make this clearer. Okay, Bill has gone travelling. When he returns, he will have been travelling for 6 months. Because I'm interested in the duration. For 6 months, he will have been travelling. Let's stop at the next garage. You will have been driving for 2 hours. So again, you can see that in these examples, we're interested in the duration. Okay, the use. Let's have a look. So we use future perfect continuous when we want to express duration at a fixed moment in the future. Next month, the students will have been studying for 6 months. By 2018, I will have been living in London for 10 years. And in August, Paul and Emma will have been living together for 1 year. So in all these examples, I'm thinking about duration at a future point. So I've got 2 points in the future, and it's the duration that we're interested in. Okay, another use of future perfect. If we want to express cause, again, of a future situation. So let's look at some examples to make this clearer. You will be tired this evening. You will have been studying all day. At the end of this course, your English will be good because you will have been studying with Perfectly Spoken. And the children will be hungry because they will have been playing football all afternoon. Okay, let's do some practice. So I'm going to show you 5 sentences. And for each of these sentences, I want you to make a future perfect continuous tense. So have a look at the sentences. I will give you the main verb, and all I want you to do is to make a future perfect continuous sentence. Okay, so number 1, how long Nick by the time he retires? Use the verb work. Number 2, next month I Chinese for 1 year. Use the verb study. Number 3, I have to go Sally for me for 1 hour. Use the verb wait. Number 4, next month James for a job for 1 month. Use the verb look. And number 5, Emily will be tired, she for 2 hours, and use the verb jog. So pause the slide and see if you can complete the 5 sentences using future perfect continuous and the verb that I have given you. Okay, how did you find that? Let's have a look at the answers. Number 1, how long will Nick have been working by the time he retires? Number 2, next month I will have been studying Chinese for 1 year. Number 3, I have to go. Sally will have been waiting for me for 1 hour. Number 4, next month James will have been looking for a job for 1 month. And number 5, Emily will be tired. She will have been jogging for 2 hours. So really well done if you got those correct. If you didn't, it's a good idea to go back and have a look at the slide at how you form it. Will plus have plus been and the ing form of the main verb. Okay, so at the beginning, I talked a little bit about future perfect simple and that we would be comparing these 2 tenses. So let's just review that in lesson 21, we looked at future perfect simple, and this is formed by will plus have and a past participle. So to practice this, I'm going to give you 6 sentences and I want you to choose which tense. Is it future perfect simple or do we need a continuous verb? Is it future perfect continuous? So let's have a look at the 6 sentences. Okay, so number 1, by 2 p.m. I for over 3 hours. Number 2, he 3 books by the end of the week. Use the verb read. Number 3, by the time he leaves for America, Stuart for 1 year. Use the verb teach. Number 4, she the report by 5 p.m. Use the verb finish. Number 5, if the mechanic doesn't repair the car tomorrow, I without a car for a week. Use the verb be. And number 6, he this book for 3 months by the end of this week, and use the verb write. So pause the slide and see if you can complete the 6 sentences using either future perfect simple or future perfect continuous. Okay, how did you find that? Well, let's have a look at the answers together. Okay, so number 1, by 2 p.m. I will have been waiting for over 3 hours. Again, we're using a continuous because we're emphasizing the period of time. Number 2, he will have read 3 books by the end of the week. This is future perfect simple because I'm focusing on the result, 3 books. Number 3, By the time he leaves for America, Stuart will have been teaching for 1 year. And again, here we're using a future perfect continuous because I'm emphasizing the fact that it's a period of time. So when I'm talking about he will have been teaching for 1 year, I'm emphasizing the period of time, so we need a continuous tense. Number 4, she will have finished the report by 5 p.m. This is the result. Number 5, if the mechanic doesn't repair the car tomorrow, I will have been without a car for a week. And number 6, he will have been writing this book for 3 months by the end of this week. Really well done if you got all of those correct. So there are some important things to remember when we're using the future perfect continuous tense. And let's have a look at some of these together. Okay, so firstly, we cannot use future perfect continuous in tenses that start with a time expression. By time expressions, I mean things like when, while, if, before, after, unless, by the time, as soon as. These sort of expressions that convey a time expression, we cannot use future perfect continuous. Instead, you need to use present perfect continuous. So let's have a look at some examples to make this clearer. So we cannot say, you won't get a bonus until you will have been working here as long as Dave. Instead, the correct version, you won't get a bonus until you have been working here as long as Dave. So notice the word until. This is a time expression. So after until, you need to use present perfect, have been working. It's impossible to use a future perfect continuous. Second rule to remember is that there are certain verbs that we cannot ever use in a continuous tense. Think of verbs like have, lose, forget, love, remember. They can't be used in a continuous tense, so we need to use them in a simple tense. Let's look at an example. So we can't say, by this evening, I will have been having this headache for 6 hours. Instead, you need to use the future perfect simple. By this evening, I will have had this headache for 6 hours. Okay, so there are possibly some new concepts there. So maybe it's a good idea to pause those slides and just read them through in your own time. Okay, and of course we need to practice. Now, so our practice example here, we're going to look at 6 sentences, and I want you to tell me, are these sentences correct or incorrect? If they're incorrect, think about why. Number 1, don't worry, she will have forgotten what happened by the morning. Number 2, you won't be able to buy a house unless you will have been renting in the area. Number 3, I'm sure I will have been remembering the answer by tomorrow. Number 4, if you will have been waiting 2 hours, please raise your hand. Number 5, while you have been watching TV, I've done the washing up. And number 6, by tomorrow, he will have had enough time to complete the task. Okay, so this is quite challenging. Pause the slide and see if you can identify which sentences are correct or incorrect. Okay, how did you find that? So to give you a clue, there are 3 correct sentences and 3 incorrect sentences. So have a look again. If you've got more than 3 incorrect, that's not right. So 3 are correct and 3 are incorrect. If you have identified 3 incorrect sentences, let's move on and see if you found the right ones. Okay, so in these answers, the correct sentences are marked in green and the incorrect sentences are marked in red. So, incorrect, numbers 2, 3 and 4. You won't be able to buy a house unless you will have been renting in the area. I'm sure I will have been remembering the answer by tomorrow. And if you will have been waiting 2 hours, please raise your hand. Now, a really important thing in terms of assimilating new grammar is to be able to understand why. So what I'd like you to do is to, if you've found these or if you haven't, now you know the 3 incorrect ones, can you identify why they are incorrect? What's the problem with these sentences? Think about the rules that we looked at in the previous slides. What do you notice about these 3 sentences? So pause the slide and see if you can correct these for me. Okay, let's have a look at the answers together. Okay, so the first one, you won't be able to buy a house unless you will have been renting in the area. This is incorrect because remember, after a time expression like unless, you cannot use future perfect continuous. Do you remember the rule we looked at? Unless is a time expression, you can't use future perfect continuous. You need to use present perfect continuous. So the correct version is, you won't be able to buy a house unless you have been renting in the area. Okay, the next incorrect sentence, I'm sure I will have been remembering the answer by tomorrow. Now, remember, certain verbs like remember, we cannot use in a continuous tense. So we cannot say remembering. Instead, we need to use future perfect simple. I'm sure I will have remembered the answer by tomorrow. Okay, and the third incorrect sentence, if you will have been waiting 2 hours, please raise your hand. Okay, again here we have a time expression if. Remember, after if we cannot use a future perfect continuous. We need to use present perfect continuous. So the correct sentence here is, if you have been waiting 2 hours, please raise your hand. So there are various stages there. The first stage is to be able to correctly identify which sentences are incorrect. Secondly, to understand why they are incorrect. And thirdly, to be able to correct them to the right version. Really super well done if you managed to do that. If you didn't, maybe go back and review the slides. Remember, after this lesson, there is an opportunity to practice. There is a practice test, so why not have a go at that? And there will also be a review lesson in lesson 25, which we will look at these 3 tenses again. Our next lesson, lesson 24, is another vocabulary lesson. So if you remember lesson 22, we looked at the verb take. In lesson 24, we're looking at another very common verb. This time it's bring. So lots of expressions and phrasal verbs using bring and a preposition. So lots of interesting things to study together. Thank you very much for watching lesson 23. I hope you enjoyed it and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.